My friends, we live in a world where we are taught to control everything. We are told that if we just plan meticulously, work tirelessly, and hold on tightly, we can shape the world to our will. But what if I told you that much of this control is an illusion? The truth is, the universe moves in ways that are often beyond our understanding, and sometimes the greatest wisdom comes from knowing when to let go. Imagine standing by a river. You could fight the current, exhaust yourself trying to swim upstream, or you could simply surrender to the flow. In that surrender, you discover something profound. There is a natural rhythm, a current that knows exactly where it's going. The river does not need to be forced, it only asks for trust. This is the nature of life. We think we must steer every moment, yet when we release our grip and trust the process, something magical happens. Things start to unfold as they were always meant to. It's as if the universe was waiting for us to step aside so it could reveal its plan. So how do we learn to relax in the face of life's uncertainties? The first step is to let go of rigid expectations. We spend so much time struggling against the unknown, trying to force outcomes that fit our narrow visions. But the unknown is not a threat, it's an invitation. It invites us to explore new possibilities, to grow beyond the limits of our imagination. When we embrace uncertainty, we open ourselves to life's endless potential. There is a wisdom in non-interference. The more we meddle, the more we disrupt the natural harmony of things. Like a gardener, we must know when to plant seeds and when to let nature do its work. There is a time for action, but there is also a time for stillness, for allowing events to unfold in their own time. Often the universe has a plan far greater than our own, if only we trusted enough to wait. To truly relax, we must also attune ourselves to the present moment. We spend so much time reliving the past or anticipating the future that we forget the richness of the now. And yet the present is all we ever really have. It's in this moment that life is happening, that the universe is speaking to us. Each breath, each sensation is part of a greater whole. Trusting the universe means trusting that this very moment is exactly where you are meant to be. There is a harmony in the universe, a dance that connects all things. Every star in the sky, every leaf that falls from a tree moves in accordance with a grand cosmic rhythm. We are not separate from this. We are participants in it. When we stop resisting, when we trust in this deep interconnection, we find that life is not a series of isolated events, but a beautifully woven tapestry where each thread contributes to the larger design. Peace comes from acceptance. When we cease our struggle against what is, and instead flow with the current of life, we discover a tranquility that cannot be found in control. Acceptance does not mean resignation. It means seeing things as they truly are and realizing that even in the chaos there is order. Even in the uncertainty there is a deeper wisdom at play. Trusting the universe is not about passivity or inaction. It's about finding freedom in the knowledge that you don't have to carry the burden of controlling everything. It's about releasing the fear that holds you back and embracing the joy of simply being. In trust, we find liberation. We allow life to move through us, and in doing so, we become open to all the wonder it has to offer. So, my friends, let us learn to relax, to let go, and to trust. Trust the flow of the river, trust the rhythm of the universe, and in that trust you will find not just peace, but a boundless freedom that will carry you to places you've never imagined. We grow up believing that we can control the circumstances of our lives, as though we are the masters of every outcome. We think that if we plan hard enough, if we push ourselves to the limit, we can force reality to bend to our will. But control in its most rigid form is an illusion. Life at its core is not something to be tightly grasped. In fact, the more we try to control it, the more it seems to slip through our fingers like sand trying to be held too tightly in a clenched fist. Consider the natural world around us. The sun rises, the seasons change, the tides ebb and flow, all without any effort from us. These things follow their course unaffected by our desire for control. And yet we so often behave as if we are separate from this natural rhythm, as if our constant striving and effort can somehow put us in command of the universe itself. But deep down we know that life moves in cycles and patterns beyond our ability to fully comprehend. There is an intelligence at work far greater than any plan we could devise. The idea of control stems from fear. Fear that if we let go, things will fall apart. But what we fail to realize is that the universe has been spinning long before we arrived, and it will continue long after we're gone. The sky doesn't ask for permission to rain, nor does the earth ask us whether it's the right time to bloom. There is a natural order that guides all things, and in the grand scheme of this order, our need for control seems at times almost comical. What if we began to see life differently? Instead of constantly trying to mold it, we could observe its unfolding with a sense of wonder. We could relax into the flow, understanding that while we may not be in control, we are always part of something far bigger than ourselves. This is not about resignation, it's about trust. It's about understanding that the same force that makes flowers grow and rivers run is also at work in our own lives, guiding us in ways we cannot always see. When we release our grip, when we stop insisting that things must be a certain way, we open ourselves to the possibility of being surprised. Life often has a way of working out in ways we could never have predicted or planned. The challenge then is to trust that process, to let go of the need to direct every detail, and to have faith that the universe knows what it's doing. When we stop trying to control everything, we make room for the magic of the unknown to enter. It is a humbling realization, but also a liberating one. By acknowledging that control is not the goal, we can focus on what truly matters: being present, being open, and being in harmony with the flow of life. The paradox is that when we let go of control, we find a deeper sense of peace and balance. We discover that there is a power in surrender, a wisdom in trusting that in the grand dance of existence, we are being carried exactly where we need to go. Letting go is not an act of giving up, nor is it a sign of weakness. Rather, it is an act of profound wisdom and understanding that not everything in life is meant to be held onto with a tight grip. We often cling to our expectations, our desires, and our visions of how things should be, thinking that the more tightly we hold, the closer we will come to controlling the outcome. But the truth is, life has its own way of unfolding, and it rarely follows the rigid plans we try to impose upon it. Imagine holding a rope, pulling it with all your strength, trying to keep something in place. Over time, your hands start to hurt, your muscles tire, and the tension becomes unbearable. This is what happens when we hold on too tightly to relationships, to ideas, to the past. We exhaust ourselves trying to maintain control, when in reality, the most freeing act we can take is to release the rope. When we let go, we allow space for new possibilities to emerge, for life to move in directions we could never have anticipated. Letting go does not mean we stop caring or that we become indifferent. It means we learn to trust the natural flow of things. It's about recognizing that some forces in life are beyond our control, and trying to fight against them only leads to suffering. When we let go, we stop resisting, we stop fighting against the current of life, and in doing so, we find peace. So often we resist change because we fear the unknown. We fear that if we don't hold on to what we know, even if it no longer serves us, we will lose something vital. But in clinging to the old, we close ourselves off to the new. We shut the door to the possibilities that come when we surrender our need for control. The process of letting go is an invitation to trust that life has a way of balancing itself out. It's a reminder that just as the seasons change, so too must we learn to change with them. Letting go requires us to embrace uncertainty. This can feel uncomfortable at first, but there is freedom in uncertainty. When we stop needing to know the outcome, we allow ourselves to live more fully in the present moment. We give ourselves the gift of experiencing life as it is, not as we wish it to be. In this space, we realize that uncertainty is not something to be feared, but something to be welcomed. It is in the unknown that life's greatest possibilities are born. This act of letting go can apply to many aspects of our lives. We may need to let go of an old belief that no longer fits who we are. We may need to release a relationship that has run its course, or an idea of success that no longer aligns with our true self. In each case, letting go is not an act of loss, but of making space. By releasing what no longer serves us, we make room for what is meant to come. At the heart of letting go is trust. Trust that life is unfolding exactly as it should, even when we cannot see the bigger picture. It is trusting that when we loosen our grip, we are not falling into chaos, but rather aligning ourselves with the deeper flow of life. When we trust, we begin to see that everything we truly need will come to us in its own time, and often in ways we never expected. Ultimately, letting go is an act of liberation. It frees us from the burden of trying to control what we cannot, and it opens us to the beauty of what is. It teaches us that life is not something to be controlled, but something to be lived with an open heart and an open hand. And when we let go, we find that what remains is exactly what was meant to be all along. Uncertainty is often seen as something to be avoided, a source of fear and discomfort. We are taught from an early age to seek certainty, to plan, to predict, and to secure our future as best we can. But life, in its infinite complexity, rarely offers us the luxury of certainty. The truth is, much of life is unpredictable. And no matter how carefully we try to control the circumstances around us, the unexpected will always find its way into our lives. Rather than resisting this, we can choose to embrace it. When we embrace uncertainty, we open ourselves to the fullness of life. We stop clinging to fixed outcomes and rigid expectations and instead allow ourselves to flow with whatever comes our way. There is a kind of beauty in the unknown, a potential that is vast and limitless. It's like stepping into an open field, not knowing what you'll find, but trusting that whatever is there will enrich your experience in ways you might never have anticipated. The human mind craves predictability because it equates it with safety. We want to know what's going to happen next, to prepare, to protect ourselves from the unknown. But life, by its very nature, is full of surprises. It's constantly shifting, evolving, moving in ways that we cannot foresee. When we try to impose certainty on an inherently uncertain world, we create tension. We resist the natural flow of events, trying to force life into boxes that it was never meant to fit into. But what if we saw uncertainty not as something to be feared, but as a space of infinite possibility? What if we understood that it is precisely in the unpredictable moments that life offers its greatest gifts? Think of the times when things didn't go according to plan. Often it is in these moments that we learn the most about ourselves. The unexpected challenges us, it forces us to adapt, to grow, and to become more than we were before. Uncertainty pushes us out of our comfort zones, and in doing so, it opens up new opportunities for growth and transformation. When we embrace uncertainty, we begin to realize that the need for certainty is an illusion. Nothing in life is truly guaranteed, and that's okay. In fact, that's what makes life so dynamic and alive. By accepting this, we allow ourselves to live more fully in the present moment. We stop worrying about what might happen tomorrow and instead focus on what is happening right now. In this way, uncertainty becomes a gateway to presence, to being fully awake and aware in each moment, rather than lost in a future that may never come. To embrace uncertainty is to trust the process of life. It's understanding that we don't need to have all the answers and that it's okay not to know what's coming next. This trust allows us to let go of the need to control everything, to soften our grip on life, and to become more fluid and adaptable. Life, like water, flows in unpredictable ways, and when we move with it rather than against it, we find a deeper sense of peace and ease. In uncertainty, there is also a sense of adventure. When we let go of the need to predict and control every outcome, we make space for spontaneity, for serendipity, and for the unexpected joys that life has to offer. It's like going on a journey without a map. There is a thrill in not knowing exactly where you'll end up, but trusting that the path will reveal itself as you walk it. And often it's the detours, the unplanned twists and turns that bring the most memorable experiences. Embracing uncertainty also means embracing vulnerability. It means acknowledging that we are not all knowing, that we don't have all the answers, and that sometimes things will not go as we hoped or planned. But this vulnerability is not a weakness. It's a powerful reminder of our humanity, of our connection to the larger unfolding of life. By accepting our vulnerability, we become more compassionate toward ourselves and others. We understand that uncertainty is a shared experience, something we all must navigate. And in this shared experience, we find common ground. Ultimately, embracing uncertainty is about surrendering to the mystery of life. It's about recognizing that while we may not always know what's coming next, we can trust that life has a way of working itself out. It's about releasing the need to control every detail and instead allowing ourselves to be surprised by the journey. In this way, uncertainty becomes a source of liberation rather than anxiety. It frees us to live with more openness, more curiosity, and more trust in the unfolding of life itself. There is a profound wisdom in knowing when to step back and allow things to unfold without interference. In a world that constantly urges us to act, to fix, and to control, this may seem counterintuitive. Yet, much of the time, the most powerful thing we can do is nothing at all. Non-interference doesn't mean indifference or neglect. It means recognizing the natural flow of events and trusting that often the best course of action is to allow life to take its own course. Consider nature. A tree doesn't need our help to grow, and the ocean doesn't need our guidance to create its tides. These forces move according to their own rhythms, governed by an intelligence far greater than our individual will. And just as we trust the seasons to change without our intervention, there are moments in our lives where the best wisdom is to step aside and let things be. This requires humility, a recognition that we are not the orchestrators of every event. Sometimes the greatest act of wisdom is to let life breathe and unfold without our constant meddling. When we constantly interfere, we impose our limited perspective on situations that are far more complex than we can see. We rush to fix problems or resolve conflicts, believing that our intervention is necessary to steer things in the right direction. But in doing so, we may disrupt a process that, if left alone, would naturally resolve itself. There is a delicate balance to life, and sometimes our actions, however well-intentioned, only add unnecessary tension to situations that are better left to evolve on their own. Non-interference teaches us patience. It reminds us that not every situation requires an immediate solution. Some things need time to settle, to grow, or to clarify themselves. Just as we cannot rush the blooming of a flower, we cannot rush the natural processes of life. By stepping back and allowing things to take their natural course, we give space for clarity to emerge. We create room for solutions to present themselves organically, rather than forcing an outcome based on our own limited understanding. This wisdom of non-interference is especially important in our relationships with others. Often we feel the need to solve other people's problems, to offer unsolicited advice, or to impose our solutions on them. But sometimes the most compassionate thing we can do is to simply listen, to hold space for them without trying to fix or direct their journey. People, like nature, have their own rhythms and their own processes of growth. When we interfere too much, we risk depriving them of the opportunity to discover their own solutions, to find their own way. Non-interference also invites us to trust the inherent intelligence of life. There is a natural order to things, a flow that operates beyond our conscious control. When we allow ourselves to be in harmony with this flow, rather than trying to manipulate or control it, we find that life often works out in ways we couldn't have planned. There's a subtle power in this kind of surrender. By allowing things to unfold as they will, we open ourselves to possibilities and outcomes that are far beyond what we could have imagined. It's important to understand that non-interference doesn't mean passivity or disengagement. It's not about avoiding responsibility or ignoring the need for action when it's truly called for. Rather, it's about discerning when action is necessary and when it is not. It's about recognizing that in many cases, things resolve themselves when given time and space to do so. This discernment is a form of wisdom that comes from observing life closely and understanding that not everything requires our direct involvement. There's also a freedom that comes with non-interference. When we stop trying to control every aspect of life, we free ourselves from the anxiety and stress that come with constant striving. We realize that we don't need to have our hands in everything and that the world doesn't rest on our shoulders. In this letting go, we find a deeper sense of peace, knowing that life has a way of balancing itself out, often without our help. By practicing non-interference, we align ourselves with the natural ebb and flow of life. We learn to trust that things have a way of working themselves out, not because we've manipulated them into place, but because we've allowed space for the natural intelligence of life to do its work. This doesn't mean that we withdraw from life or that we avoid action when it's necessary, but it does mean that we become more mindful of when to act and when to step back. In this way, non-interference becomes a practice of trust, patience, and humility. It teaches us that not everything needs fixing, that sometimes the greatest wisdom is in doing less, not more. When we embrace this wisdom, we open ourselves to the flow of life and allow it to move through us, unimpeded by our need for control. And in that openness, we discover the quiet power of simply allowing life to be as it is. We spend so much of our lives caught up in the past or anxiously anticipating the future that we often miss the only reality that truly exists, the present moment. The present is where life happens, yet it's the very thing we overlook in our quest to control outcomes, replay old memories, or worry about what might come next. To attune ourselves to the present moment is to become fully alive, fully engaged with the here and now. It is in this moment, and this moment alone, where life unfolds in all its richness and depth. When we are not attuned to the present, we live in a state of distraction. Our minds wander to what has already passed, rehashing conversations, reliving old hurts, or clinging to fleeting moments of joy. Or we leap ahead, consumed by what might happen tomorrow, fearing unknown outcomes or hoping for specific results. But both of these mental habits, the fixation on the past and the anticipation of the future, take us away from the one thing that is real, the present moment. Attuning to the present requires us to slow down, to quiet the noise in our minds, and to notice what is happening right here, right now. It asks us to become aware of the sensations in our bodies, the sights and sounds around us, and the thoughts passing through our minds without getting swept up in them. This state of presence is not something we often practice in our fast-paced, goal-oriented world, but it is in the present moment that life's true richness is revealed. In the present moment, we find peace. The anxiety of worrying about the future dissipates, as does the regret of lingering in the past. The present is neutral. It is simply what is. And when we become attuned to it, we realize that there is a deep tranquility in just being. There is no need to rush or strive because the present is enough. It contains everything we need if only we'd stop long enough to see it. Being present also means being aware of the fleeting nature of life. Each moment arises and then fades away, never to be repeated in exactly the same way. When we attune ourselves to the present, we come to appreciate the preciousness of each moment. Whether it is a moment of joy or sorrow, excitement or boredom, it is unique and irreplaceable. This awareness encourages us to live more fully, to savor the small details of life that we so often overlook in our rush to get somewhere else. Attuning to the present moment does not mean that we ignore the past or the future. Rather, it means that we engage with those aspects of time from a place of presence. When we reflect on the past, we do so without getting lost in regret or nostalgia. When we plan for the future, we do so without becoming consumed by anxiety or expectation. By remaining rooted in the present, we bring a greater sense of clarity and calm to our thoughts about both the past and the future. When we are present, we also become more attuned to others. We listen more deeply, observe more carefully, and connect more meaningfully with the people around us. So often in conversations, we are not truly listening, we are waiting for our turn to speak, or we are distracted by our own thoughts. But when we bring ourselves fully into the moment, we engage with others in a way that is more authentic and compassionate. We are not trying to fix them, judge them, or predict what they will say next. We are simply with them as they are in this shared moment. There is also a creative power in attuning to the present moment. It is in these moments of full presence that inspiration strikes, that we find solutions to problems, or that we have breakthroughs in our understanding. When we are present, our minds are open and receptive, free from the clutter of worry and distraction. Ideas flow more easily, and we are better able to access the deeper wisdom that resides within us. In this way, the present moment is not just a place of peace, but a place of possibility. To attune to the present moment is to trust that this moment is exactly as it should be. Even if it's uncomfortable, uncertain, or challenging, it is what it is. And in accepting that, we free ourselves from the mental and emotional resistance that often causes unnecessary suffering. Life unfolds in the present, and when we are fully here, we realize that we don't need to change it, escape it, or control it. We simply need to experience it. In the present moment, we are no longer divided between what was and what might be. We are whole. We are alive. And in that wholeness, we discover a deep sense of contentment, a sense that we are exactly where we need to be. Attuning to the present is not just about mindfulness or meditation, it's about embracing life in its fullness, without the distractions of time pulling us away from what is real. In the simplicity of the present, we find a profound truth that life is not something happening to us or something we need to chase. Life is happening right now in every breath, every heartbeat, every sensation. When we attune ourselves to this moment, we attune ourselves to the very essence of what it means to be alive. The universe operates with a remarkable harmony, a rhythm that we often overlook in our daily lives. Everything from the movements of the planets to the growth of a single blade of grass follows a pattern, a flow that is both intricate and simple at the same time. We often perceive life as chaotic, full of disorder and randomness, yet when we step back and observe the larger picture, we begin to see an underlying order that connects everything. This harmony is the essence of the universe, and it is always present even when we are not fully aware of it. Think of the way the stars move across the sky, the way the tides rise and fall, or how the seasons change with such regularity. These are not random events, but expressions of a deep cosmic order. The universe has its own way of balancing itself, of keeping things in motion, and of creating harmony out of apparent chaos. Even when we encounter turmoil in our lives, this harmony persists. It's just that we may be too caught up in our limited perspective to see it clearly. The harmony of the universe is not something we have to create or maintain. It is something we are already a part of. We too are expressions of this greater order. Our lives, our experiences, even our thoughts and emotions are all woven into the fabric of this universal harmony. The challenge is to recognize this and to align ourselves with it rather than resisting it. So often we feel out of sync with life because we are trying to impose our will on things, to force situations to unfold according to our own designs. But when we let go of that need for control, we begin to move with the flow of the universe rather than against it. This harmony is not about perfection, nor is it about everything going exactly as we planned. In fact, the universe's harmony includes both light and dark, order and chaos, birth and death. It is the dance of opposites, the balance of forces that creates the beauty and complexity of life. There is no need for us to fear the difficult or the uncertain, for these two are part of the greater whole. In accepting both the highs and lows of life, we come to understand that everything has its place in the larger scheme of things. One of the most powerful aspects of the universe's harmony is that it allows for infinite diversity within a unified whole. Every person, every creature, every atom is unique, yet all are connected. Just as every note in a piece of music plays a part in creating the overall melody, so too does each individual experience contribute to the harmony of the universe. Our lives are like single notes in a grand symphony, and while each note is distinct, together they create something far greater than the sum of its parts. When we attune ourselves to this harmony, we find a sense of peace and belonging. We realize that we don't have to struggle to fit in or to force things to go our way. Life has a natural rhythm, and when we align with it, we move more easily through the challenges and opportunities that come our way. There is a sense of flow, a feeling that we are being carried along by something much larger than ourselves. This doesn't mean that life is without difficulty, but it does mean that even in the midst of challenges, we can feel a deeper sense of connection and trust in the process. The harmony of the universe also invites us to live with greater awareness and respect for the interconnectedness of all things. When we recognize that everything is part of a greater whole, we become more mindful of our actions, knowing that what we do affects the larger web of life. This awareness encourages us to act with compassion and wisdom, understanding that we are not separate from the world around us, but intricately linked to it. Our actions ripple out into the universe just as the movements of the stars ripple through space. In many ways, the universe is like a great orchestra with each of us playing our part. There are times when the music swells and times when it quiets, moments of intense drama and moments of stillness. Each part of the symphony is essential, and none can exist without the others. When we trust in the harmony of the universe, we allow ourselves to take part in this grand composition, knowing that our role, however small it may seem, is vital to the whole. To recognize the harmony of the universe is to embrace the idea that life is not something we have to fight against or struggle to control. Life is a dance, and we are part of the rhythm. When we trust in this harmony, we can let go of the constant need to manage, manipulate, and predict. We can relax into the flow of existence, knowing that the universe is guiding us in ways we may not always understand, but that are ultimately aligned with a greater balance. In this harmony, we find a deep sense of peace. We come to realize that we don't need to know all the answers because the universe is already in balance. Our task is simply to listen, to observe, and to move with the music, trusting that we are always in the right place at the right time, playing our part in the beautiful symphony of life. In life, we often find ourselves wrestling with the idea of how things should be, holding on to our desires, expectations, and visions of how life ought to unfold. But as much as we strive to mold the world around us to fit our ideals, there are countless moments when reality takes a different turn. In these moments, resistance only breeds frustration, anxiety, and suffering. Yet peace, true, lasting peace, comes not from trying to control what is outside of us, but from the simple, profound act of acceptance. Acceptance doesn't mean giving up or resigning ourselves to fate. Rather, it is the quiet realization that life unfolds on its own terms, often in ways we cannot foresee or understand. It is recognizing that there is a vast intelligence at play, a natural order that we are part of but do not control. To accept is to trust in this process, to allow things to be as they are without the constant need to push, pull, or reshape them according to our personal wishes. When we resist what is happening, we create tension. We try to fight against the flow of life, believing that things must be different for us to be happy or at peace. But in this resistance, we only deepen our suffering. It's like trying to swim against a strong current. No matter how much effort we exert, we find ourselves exhausted and no closer to where we want to be. Acceptance, on the other hand, is like floating with the current, trusting that it will carry us where we need to go, even if we don't fully understand the destination. This doesn't mean we don't have preferences or desires. It simply means we recognize that our control over the external world is limited. There are things we cannot change: the past, the actions of others, certain circumstances that arise unexpectedly. What we can change is how we respond to these events. Acceptance allows us to respond from a place of calm and clarity rather than reacting from a place of fear or frustration. When we find peace and acceptance, we release the need for life to be different than it is. We stop clinging to what we think should have happened or what we hope will happen in the future. Instead, we open ourselves to the present moment exactly as it is. In this openness, we discover a sense of freedom from the burdens of expectation, judgment, and control. We realize that life is not something to be mastered or conquered, but something to be lived moment by moment. Acceptance also invites us to embrace our own imperfections and limitations. So much of our internal struggle comes from the pressure we put on ourselves to be a certain way, to achieve certain things, or to meet the expectations of others. But peace arises when we accept ourselves as we are in all our complexity. We stop trying to fit into ideals that may not align with who we truly are. And instead, we honor our unique path. This self-acceptance allows us to move through life with greater ease and compassion, both for ourselves and for others. In accepting ourselves, we also come to accept the imperfections of others. We realize that just as we are doing our best with the knowledge and tools we have, so too is everyone else. This understanding fosters a deep sense of empathy and connection. Rather than judging or condemning others for their actions, we begin to see them with greater compassion. We accept that they too are part of the unfolding of life and that their journey, like ours, is complex and ever-changing. Finding peace and acceptance also means accepting the cycles of life. Just as the seasons change, so do the experiences of joy and sorrow, gain and loss, love and pain. Nothing in life is permanent, and in recognizing this, we become less attached to outcomes and more attuned to the flow of existence. We stop fearing change and instead embrace it as a natural part of life's rhythm. In accepting the ebb and flow, we find peace not in the absence of challenges, but in our ability to move through them with grace and equanimity. Ultimately, acceptance is a form of surrender, not a surrender to defeat, but a surrender to the wisdom of life itself. It is a letting go of the need to control every outcome and a deep trust in the unfolding of things. When we surrender in this way, we align ourselves with the flow of the universe, allowing life to carry us rather than fighting against it. This surrender brings a profound sense of peace because we are no longer at war with reality. We are no longer striving to make things fit our desires. We are simply present, allowing life to be what it is. In this state of acceptance, we discover a peace that is not dependent on external circumstances. It is a peace that arises from within, from the understanding that life in all its complexity is unfolding exactly as it needs to. We realize that we are part of a much larger process, one that we do not need to control or force. In accepting this, we find a deep sense of harmony with the world around us, and most importantly, with ourselves. Trusting life is one of the most liberating things we can do, yet it's often the most difficult. We are taught from an early age to plan, to predict, to prepare for all possible outcomes. We are told that safety lies in control, in knowing what's ahead and steering ourselves toward the desired end. But control is at best an illusion. The more we grasp at it, the more it slips through our fingers, leaving us anxious, restless, and burdened. Trust, on the other hand, opens up a path to freedom, a freedom that comes not from controlling life, but from flowing with it. To trust life is to recognize that we are not separate from the vast intelligence of the universe. Just as the sun rises each day without our intervention and the trees grow without our guidance, there is a deeper order at work in our lives. Trusting this order doesn't mean we give up on making decisions or pursuing goals, but it means we stop trying to micromanage the outcome. We allow life to unfold naturally, understanding that while we can influence events, we do not control them. In trusting, we free ourselves from the constant mental chatter of what if and what next. We no longer have to strain under the weight of endless planning and worrying about whether things will turn out exactly as we hope. Trusting life allows us to live more fully in the present moment because we're no longer tied up in trying to predict or shape the future. The more we let go, the more space we create for peace and spontaneity to arise. Trusting life doesn't mean everything will always go our way. In fact, trust is most tested during times of uncertainty and challenge. But this is where real freedom lies, knowing that even in uncertainty, even when things don't go according to plan, we are still held by something greater. We are still part of the unfolding of life, and that unfolding has a wisdom we may not fully understand in the moment. By trusting, we allow ourselves to be guided by this wisdom rather than by our limited perspectives. Trust also frees us from the need to resist what is happening. Often we react to situations with fear or frustration when they don't align with our desires or expectations. But trust teaches us that life's detours, its twists and turns, are not mistakes, they are simply part of the journey. When we trust, we stop fighting against reality, and in doing so, we find freedom from the suffering that comes from resistance. We begin to see challenges not as obstacles to our happiness, but as necessary steps along the path of growth and discovery. This kind of trust requires vulnerability. It asks us to let go of the belief that we can control everything, to open ourselves up to uncertainty, and to have faith that we will be okay regardless of what happens. This can feel uncomfortable because it means acknowledging our limitations and embracing the unknown, but it is in this vulnerability that true freedom is found. When we stop holding on so tightly, we release the tension in our minds and bodies, and we open ourselves to the vast possibilities that life has to offer. Trusting life also means trusting ourselves. It's about believing that we have the inner strength, wisdom, and resilience to navigate whatever comes our way. So often we doubt ourselves, thinking we're not capable or strong enough to handle life's challenges. But trust reminds us that we are. It reminds us that just as the universe moves in harmony, so too do we have the capacity to move in harmony with life. This trust in ourselves is empowering. It allows us to take risks, to step into the unknown with confidence, knowing that no matter what happens, we will learn and grow from the experience. Trust frees us from the burden of seeking approval or validation from others. When we trust in the flow of life, we are no longer dependent on external opinions to guide our decisions. We begin to follow our own inner compass, trusting that our path is unique and valid, even if it doesn't conform to societal expectations. This gives us the freedom to be authentic, to live in alignment with our true selves rather than constantly trying to fit into the mold of what we think we should be. In relationships, trust is the foundation of true freedom. When we trust others, we allow them to be who they are without trying to control or change them. This kind of trust creates space for deeper connection and intimacy because it's based on acceptance rather than fear or manipulation. It also frees us from the anxiety that comes from trying to manage other people's behavior or worrying about how they will respond. When we trust, we let go of the need to control, and in doing so, we create the conditions for genuine, loving relationships to flourish. Ultimately, trust is a path to freedom because it liberates us from the fear of the unknown. It teaches us that we don't have to know all the answers or foresee every outcome. Life is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived, and trust allows us to embrace that mystery with an open heart. We realize that we are part of something far greater than our individual concerns, and in that realization, we find peace. Trusting life allows us to dance with the flow of existence rather than struggling against it. It shows us that freedom isn't about having control over every aspect of life, but about letting go and allowing life to unfold in its own time, in its own way. And in that letting go, we discover a lightness of being, a sense of ease, and a profound connection to the greater whole. This is the freedom that trust offers, a freedom that comes not from mastering life, but from allowing life to guide us. In conclusion, the journey of learning to relax and trust the universe is a profound exploration of acceptance, harmony, and freedom. It calls us to let go of the illusion of control and embrace the flow of life as it unfolds. By recognizing the intricate balance of the universe, we discover that everything happens in its own time and way. Trusting this process allows us to find peace and acceptance, freeing us from the burdens of resistance and expectation. As we attune ourselves to the present moment, we unlock the beauty of each experience, appreciating the richness of life and all its complexity. We learn to surrender to the wisdom of non-interference, understanding that sometimes the best course of action is to step back and let things be. In this space of trust, we also cultivate a deeper connection with ourselves and others, recognizing our shared journey in this vast cosmic dance. Ultimately, the path to freedom lies in our ability to trust life. It invites us to move beyond fear and limitation, embracing the uncertainty that comes with being alive. In letting go of our need to control, we open ourselves to the infinite possibilities that life has to offer. As we navigate the ebb and flow of existence, we discover that true peace resides not in the absence of challenges, but in our willingness to accept and trust the unfolding journey. In doing so, we awaken to the profound truth that we are not separate from the universe. We are integral parts of its magnificent tapestry, co-creating our reality with each breath, each moment, and each choice.